Ponsonby Rugby Club, I'll ask Peter Thorpe and Barrett Blaylock to come forward, please. Have you got your mate there?
Sorry, he can't make it. I'll explain.
It's a shame that Sir BG can't be here. I saw him the other day, but he's not up to it either, but he's very keen on what you're doing. So
Business. He has a life to live other than Ponsonby Rugby, as do I might add, but mind if I sit?
you go.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. My name's Peter Thorpe, as you know. I've got a couple of apologies to start off with. I'll explain first who I am. I'm a life member of the club. I've been on the committee for over 30 odd years, over half of which I've been chairman or president, and heavily involved in the ongoing debate of the tenure for the club, be it at Western Springs or wherever, starting right back in the time when we moved out of Blake Street. So that's my credential. I would just like to give an apology for Barrett. As I've already explained, he just couldn't make it. He had to pull out last night. Also for our chairman, Greg Edmonds, our present chairman, who may be known to a number of you. He can't make it for business reasons either. And finally, which some of you will be aware of, but Sir Brian Williams. Dear BG, I'm talking about my 30 odd years. He's, I think, about double that in his time at Ponsonby. It's well known he did have a severe stroke towards the end of last year. He's still struggling. He would love to be here, but he can't. He's slowly rebuilding his body and his mind, step by step, but it's a long road. So I have a short statement that I will read before I produce a single page that I prepared, which I'd like to circulate. I've got enough copies here, which basically sets out the Ponsonby position. And I will just address that. It won't take very long. But BG, I wish to express my support for the current plan recommended by Tataki, which enables Ponsonby Rugby to focus on its future at Western Springs. The club has now been situated there since 1997, coming up for 30 years. The club is now 152 years old and won both Auckland Premier titles, the Gallagher Shield for men and the Coleman Cup for women last year for the second year in a row. This year the club will field 10 senior, including 2 women's rugby teams, 44 junior rugby teams and 4 netball teams, as well as touch and sevens teams. The club is also keen to provide for a wider than rugby community and considers that it is more than adequately equipped to remain at Western Springs and help provide the best long-term outcome for the community. End quote from Beach. Now to turn to the position statement that's been passed around. Right. Ponsonby Rugby supports the Tataki recommendations as a sensible stage 1, which will enable the joint club promoter Western Springs Bowl concept to be tested and refined to ensure the community achieves the best long-term outcome. The club considers that the joint club promoter concept will be the best long-term outcome for the community because it will provide, first, an improved concert and events venue with permanent staging and VIP infrastructure to maximise the use of the iconic amphitheatre and accompanying flat space and enhance Auckland's UNESCO City of Music status. Brent Eccles, as you've heard, has elaborated on that from the position of considerable experience, probably second to none, that he has in this field. Second, a broadcast-capable, boutique-sized rectangular sports stadium with seating close to the sidelines so as to create a spectator and player experience not presently available in Auckland. Close to the sidelines is the key in that phrase. The closest we can think of is probably Trust Stadium in Waitakere, but even then there's a running track that separates the seating. The intimacy of the experience when the seating is close to the sideline is something that we're just not used to in Auckland, but there's there is the gap in the market that we have identified that we're able to fill at Western Springs as a second objective. And we think that will attract a whole host of sports for whom Eden Park is just way too big. I can think, for example, even a Gallagher Shield final. We've been there a few times at Ponsonby. We go to Eden Park, it's fine, but you're a bit like a pimple on a pumpkin. It's just not a big enough fixture to warrant that size of stadium. Whereas the intimacy and the ambience that we can create at a stadium like Western Springs, as is proposed, would create a wonderful atmosphere. And there's all sorts of other fixtures that you can think of that it would appeal to. Third, a new community sports hub with the club as the anchor tenant, situated above the floodplain. Don't forget, where we are now is in a floodplain. No one could do much about that. Close to and overlooking the field on the opposite side of the stadium, with access from Old Mill Road to lessen disruption during concerts and events. The essential part of that is a community sports hub, because we see the three-pronged appeal of this joint proposal we've put together with Brent Eccles and his associates is firstly concerts, obviously, secondly sport, but third, community. We think between the three of them that will create a far greater degree of community access to and involvement in Western Springs going forward than it's ever had. Although stage one does not contain a commitment to a new community sports hub, you've seen the report, which they've said this is not on the table at the present time, the 5-year extension to its present lease, which otherwise expires at the end of 2027, will enable the club and the promoters to work with the council, Te Taki, and other sporting and community groups to provide a suitable long-term solution for the club at the stadium. The club has already taken steps to canvass support amongst other groups and identified a few that may be interested. It is serious about its ultimate aim of solving its floodplain problem, as well as its space problem. As it is now, it's confined in space. It's just not got enough space in its current facilities, and the ability to create a community facility in which other sports and other community groups can share is what the opportunity is that we're keen to be part of. There are a number of funding options for that, incidentally. It's not necessarily us, in case anybody thinks this, turning up to the council, even in just a couple of years' time, saying we need a cheque. There are other options that we haven't yet explored, but it doesn't necessarily involve coming to Auckland Council and saying, can you pay for it? And finally, and importantly, the objectives, which I've set out, of this joint club promoter concept simply cannot be achieved were Speedway to return to the stadium. The permanent stage Brent's referred to. I guess we know the stadium well, and we just can't achieve the objectives of any of those three attributes or three features that I've summarised if the Speedway track stays there, if the infrastructure for Speedway stays there where the cars come on and off the track. And that's something I can assure you we have thought about. I just want to conclude by saying the last thing Ponsonby Rugby wants to do is to get into any sort of contest with Speedway. It fully understands. It fully understands. Speedway has been there a long time, as have we. And longer than us, as somebody says. There's just one critical feature, though. And unfortunately, this hasn't been mentioned yet, so it needs to be understood. We've been at this for many, many years because we've been aware that our lease was going to be running out, and we have looked very, very hard at where else we can go. Studies have been done, various options identified, And sure, you can put us anywhere if you're prepared to put try and put a square peg into a round hole by just making the peg round and decimating the club. We don't have any options. We have always had the understanding when we started this joint proposal that there were other options to Speedway, that this council had actually decided and started down the path of at least, and in fact invested $11 million in out at Waikaraka. But therefore there is an option, but for us there's none. So for that reason, if it turns out that Speedway stays at the stadium, then as we have for 30 years, then we can't live with it. It won't achieve any of these objectives. It'll still leave us really with the problems we have of lack of space and difficulty therefore in providing for our future and the growth into wider than rugby that we want to achieve.
Councillor Gillen has a question.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that you understood that the option that you've said that you support today is quite different to what went out for consultation. And the one in consultation was for a joint 30-year lease to Ponsonby Rugby, and you'd have it in the rugby season. It would be a 30-year lease with 2 rights of renewal, so totaling of 10 years each, so totaling 50 years. But what's in front of us at the moment is instead a 5-year extension of your lease with a redevelopment clause in there that means you could be out within 2 years. And the other aspects that you supported, such as the club rooms, etc., are unfunded and are set to be pushed out to a future decision. So I just want to check whether you were fully aware of that.
The intention is that this be stage 1, and it's intended to test the concept, build what we've understood to be a relatively temporary, it may not be entirely temporary, build facilities to test this concept that the promoters have, where they think they can attract these acts of that mid-range that Brent referred to, and therefore, rather than having to decide now on our request, which has been long-standing for a new lease for as long as we can get, obviously we've got nowhere else to go, we have agreed to go with a 5-year extension to give us time to move, and then in conjunction with promoters, we can determine a final outcome. And as you've heard from Brent, there are issues such as, for him, how they make money out of the stadium, how he can get a return for his efforts, and who actually pays for what long term that are yet to be resolved. So we've got 5 years with the intention that there be time to move. And that starts from the end of next year, so it's effectively 6.5 years. The 2 years has unfortunately been not correctly recorded in the recommendation, and I've discussed it with the Tataki officers. Our current lease has always had a redevelopment clause, but it's a redevelopment clause that contains pretty real safeguards for the club. It's not a clause that enables Tataki, for whatever reason, just to say we want the stadium, see you later, be that in 2 years' time or at any time. And we have constantly been talking about the lease staying as it is for 5 years, including that redevelopment clause. And our view is that that obviates the need for what's described in the recommendation as a 2-year termination right without reason. And that, as I understand it, is the expectation of the Tataki board. So,
Thank you for that. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thornton, and pass on our best wishes to BG. Your club is indeed fortunate to have him in this matter and everything else. Yeah. I just wanted to pick you up and ask you about, this 30 years, I think 29 years, Speedway's been there 97 years, but for those 30 years, the relationship has been, and this has come from a number of Ponsonby Rugby people before some of the council entities got involved, has been very amicable. There's been good cooperation, remarkably so, given separate codes. So the first thing I'd just seek your feedback in is how that relationship has actually developed over those years, because it seems to me to have been one where the two parties have got on well together. And the other one is just really just to seek a further clarification on your understanding of this clause, because in our resolutions we're looking to pass here, it says, including a redevelopment clause enabling termination. So you seem to be saying that that doesn't appear to be the case. But first of all, the 30-year relationship, and secondly, those particular words, enabling termination, that would seem to me I wouldn't be making too many long-term plans.
We're well aware of that. Look, I'll address the second point first again, just to be clear. It does, and as most redevelopment clauses do, entitle the owner to say we want to do something different, and the club is always some means of looking after us. And a clause is, it's quite a comprehensive clause, it's quite a fair clause. It just prevents an arbitrary decision to put us out on the street, which obviously nobody wants. And that's the point I'm making. The way it's expressed in the recommendation is unfortunate, because you could read that literally to say that it would give them the right just to put us out on the street. And obviously we're not going to ever agree to that. The first point, which I'll deal with second, I just want to take you back. You were there then. On the 18th of October, I know we can't go back over previous decisions, but we delivered a summary of our position through Councillor Mike Lee. He read it out to everybody because we thought it fair then, while Speedway was the cause or the subject of an extended debate that day, to set our position out. And I think it probably best reflects our position. I started by pointing out how old we are. We're 152 years old now. For the last 27, coming up for 30, we have shared the use of the stadium and outer fields with Speedway and other event promoters. Although that has generally been successful, it has not been ideal. The club's present club rooms and associated storage and other facilities need expansion and upgrade, particularly to meet growth in the women's game, and present field lighting and changing room availability is inadequate. And I referred also to the requirement to vacate completely during event setup and breakdown. The difficulty in that regard is why it's not going to be a tenable option for us just to stay as we are. We need to grow. We can't just go backwards, which will otherwise happen. And secondly, we need to get out of the floodplain. And so when we saw the promoters' ideas, we also saw the opportunity to be able to do that in a sustainable way, in a community-led way, so as to provide for other community users, but also to be able to achieve what we believe is a lot better use of the stadium by getting seating up close to the sideline, and by taking on board what the promoters say, that with a permanent stage structure, the reputation of the place could be gained internationally, similar to the Hollywood Bowl, for example, where acts know it and they know that it's all there and they'll come. So that's pretty attractive to us. It gives us the opportunity to really provide for our long-term future, which we've been keen to do for some time. But look, if we had to turn the clock back and go to a situation where Speedway was returning to the stadium, as I said, we have nowhere else we can go. We would have to make something work. But it most certainly won't be ideal. It'll leave all our problems, and I can assure you, create probably a few other problems as well.
Sorry, did you see the proposal of the Western Springs Speedway Association and the rather palatial arrangements for Ponsonby Rugby under that proposal?
I haven't seen those.
Probably pay to have a look at them.
I haven't seen those, and this needs to be explained. Greg Edmonds would be able to explain that if he was here. When we were first aware of the group that's just incorporated itself last December, as I hear from the answer to the Mayor's question, there was a suggestion made through our chairman that they talked to us, but at that time we were well down the track with the promoters, and the reply was, well, we can't be dealing with two of you at once, it's just not honest. And so that's where it's been left. We haven't had any formal approach, we haven't had any anyone send to us any detail of any proposals Speedway's made, and that's where we sit, not just me, we. for whatever reason.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thorpe, for coming along today and speaking to us. Yeah. Also, look, just acknowledging the fact that Speedway's solicitor came up and spoke about the EOI process, the expression of interest process. I just wanted to get some clarity around that. Were you from the club's point of view, were you involved in that EOI process on behalf of the club and making a submission at the time that that was open?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We learned about it indirectly at the 11th hour, but we got our proposal in, and we never were under any expectation that the existing users of the stadium didn't have to participate.
Okay. And just, there could be some confusion around the table around this next point, so this is why I'm asking the question. When you made your EOI submission, did you make that on behalf of the Ponsonby Club only? Because some of us understand the club made one was made by Mr. Eccles, and another one was made by the...
Look, I mentioned the paper we gave in October of 24. Attached to that was a proposal that we'd got architects to put together for us, which involved putting a new second story right across the existing building where the clubroom is. It was a pretty attractive looking proposal, and that expressly said this will work for us with or without Speedway, because it just covered the existing footprint of the existing building. That was what was on foot at the present at that time, and that was the subject of our EOI.
Very good. That's very helpful, Mr. Thorpe. So,
And that was that. Just to explain, that was intended again to be a community facility that made use of that space right through the second level. It wasn't ideal because it wouldn't get us close to the ground, but it was better than what we've got. It would give us more room, and it would give the community the opportunity also to participate. It was quite a generous concept.
thank you for that. I'm probably just trying to understand the process more than anything. So you're involved, you put in your submission. Then now you've talked about today about this joint idea, so what was the process? At what time did it morph from being just your own EOI into this joint one? At what time did that occur? And what was the process behind that? Because I'm a little bit confused with the timelines around that.
Well, my recollection is, it's fact, there were three proposals. One from our Ponsonby mate, Ali Williams, which upset us greatly, who basically wanted to buy the stadium for nothing for 100 years. Second was from the promoters, and we had no prior knowledge about that until the EOI process had produced these proposals. And third from us. As I said, we got ours in near the end of the process. And so when we learned of the second one from the promoters, we were at the stage where we had each of the three proposals been invited to present them to Tataki. Before, and I think not the main council, just Tataki, I can't recall, but what we then thought is we quite liked the look of the promoter's idea, and we thought, well, why don't we put the two together? So we approached them and said, how about it? They said yes, and it was from there that we developed the joint proposal, and that was advocated to, I think it was to this body, to council, as well as to Tataki. And that was, I can't remember the exact timing that happened, but the OI process had concluded, and that's how those two proposals became one.
So thank you, Mr. Thorpe. So I think I just picked up your last comment there, which probably answered my final question. That, from your recollection, that occurred after the EI process had finished, did you say, that you had those discussions?
I can't say that the EOI process had finished. It was at that stage of the process where the expressions of interest had been called for, they'd been received. There were three, as I said. They were then being given the opportunity of presenting each proposal so the decision maker could make a decision. And it was before the decision maker made a decision, and in the process of having been invited to make a presentation, that we decided to combine our presentations. And so we did exactly that.
Okay, thank you. I think there might be a slight difference between a close-off date of the EOI and those discussions that you had post. So, anything
I think in terms of close-off, the time they gave for expression of interest had expired.
that's very
Thank you
good.
for that. Councillor
Okay.
Turner, last question.
Thank you. I'll be quick, Mr. Mayor. 3 quick questions. Sir, it just sounds to me like what the club's got sitting in front of them right now is basically life support until you get to a point where you can go further forward, correct?
That's one way of putting it.
Thank you.
Correct.
So then, is it correct, is my knowledge of history correct that many, many years ago, the club was in the same situation when your building burnt down and Speedway invited you to Western Springs?
No. My mate BG, I went to school with Sir Brian. I hadn't been involved with Ponsonby, and the club was in Blake Street. It had been there 120 years. It, I believe, was the longest continuous ratepayer in Auckland City, because all the government bodies and the schools and whatever didn't pay rates. And it was financially strapped for a number of reasons that I won't go into. And so Bede said, look, the club's in trouble, will you come and help out? And I agreed. I'm a lawyer, as you may know, and a barrister, and I had a busy practice. Anyway, since then I stayed on. We first looked at how we could get by whilst still owning Blake Street. And as a number of clubs have realised in the decades since, we found we couldn't have all our capital tied up in bricks and mortar, so we decided that we had to do something that involved us moving and selling Blake Street. And the object of selling Blake Street was to create a fund that would provide income for us. Because the problem the club was facing, and all clubs, is that in the days of old, the bar provided all the income you need. That was waning seriously with the advent of professional sport and just serious-minded sports people who just don't drink as much. And when the club finally realised that the bar wasn't providing for it, we had to find another income stream. So we had to capitalise on the asset it had, and we did that. We initially looked at going to Cox's Bay. The club was probably about a third of the size it is now. We got into a howl of residential protest down there, which frankly I think was correct. They could see we were going to grow, and the capacity of the domain to handle a club of our size was just not there. And so we were invited by the mayor of the day, Les Mills, to consider going to the stadium. And that's how we ended up going down to Western Springs.
Thank you. I'll update my understanding of history. Last question. You talked about round peg and square hole, etc. You know, do you not think that what's happened to Speedway is that they have been forced into a round hole? And do you not have sympathy? You know, could you not hand out an olive leaf to other sporting people to work together as you has in the past?
Well, I don't think there's any comparison in the two situations for the reasons I've given. For the reasons I've given before, Speedway has 12 events at the Springs each year. We're an ongoing operation right throughout the year, and our situation really is quite different. Speedway, I don't want to compare their situation with ours. I don't want to say that they're in any different a situation or worse or better situation than we are, but I'm still of the view myself, and I think this is generally considered by the club, that there seems to be a pretty good option at Waikaraka Park if they were prepared to invest for it. Whereas for us, there is no option. If we, as has been suggested, Ali Williams was keen on this, were to go into Cox's Bay, we worked it out, we'd have to basically reduce in size by at least half to have any hope at all of existing down there. And even then, I don't think that would work.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and I'll move that we receive the public input from Peter Thorpe on behalf of Ponsonby Rugby Club. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to have a break for 5 minutes for and then we'll reconvene with the opening item of the main event. Thank you all for attending.